Yeah, save your marriage.
It's very
You
nice.
stop fighting as much. I mean, I can't believe how much conflict comes from 2 sleep-deprived, irritable, like, how much was that worth? I'll pay anything to not fight with my wife, man.
'Cause we train like, you can't train people to endure torture by torturing them because that's not very moral, but they use sleep deprivation, right, to endure torture. It's and they'll literally play the sound of babies crying over loudspeakers. That's how Navy SEALs will like, it
That's great.
and so every parent is kinda going through, like, a light basic training to be a Navy SEAL, which isn't what most people sign up for.
Yeah. You are listening to Dedicated Joe, the new dad's guide on the upending and transformational experience of becoming a father. One of the hardest things about being a new parent, as I'm sure you all know, is all the lost sleep. It stresses out our brains, our bodies, our relationships. It makes us question our general sanity. Well, my guest today has been deep in the trenches of newborn sleep, both as a two-time dad himself, but also as an expert. Great to have on Lewis Krell, who's a dad of 2, a 5-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son, who is part of the team behind the SNOO, which is Dr. Harvey Karp's science-backed smart bassinet. And before he even ever worked there, he was just a super tired dad trying to figure out why every parent for the last 30 years has just accepted the, oh, you just won't sleep for a year, as if that was just a rule. He's like, that there's got to be something better than that. And through that, he discovered the technology behind the SNOO and eventually started working there and is now part of their team. This is really, really cool technology that mimics a womb-like environment for your baby and can get them up to 2 hours more of uninterrupted sleep a night, which is just insane. So in this episode, we go over the practical, the safety tips, the sleep science, the EMF concerns, the weaning out of sleep crutches, daytime routines, wake windows, all the tools that actually matter. So if you are about to have a baby or have just had a newborn, this is the time for you to consider this kind of technology to help you sleep more. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm real excited to have Lewis Krell on the show today.
Wow, good to be here. Definitely not the best guy, but the guy who was available, I suppose. So I'll take it. I do know a guy, my boss who invented that is probably the guy, but still an honor to be here. And yeah, happy to meet you. I've been loving and listening to the podcast, and we like the 5S shout out as well.
Yeah, for sure. So awesome. Well, yeah, tell me a story. Tell me about your kind of your pregnancy and birth journey. Give us a sense of how you became a dad and found this
Yeah,
talent.
for sure. So, I mean, I guess I won't take you all the way back to the beginning, but our daughter was born. So in 2020, it was September 2020. I'm also in Vancouver, Canada. So I feel like the COVID situation here was like a little more restrictive than where you are for a lot of the time. So our daughter was really born, kind of depths of the pandemic. And I'll skip way ahead on all my like career background, but at the time I was actually working for a travel technology company. And as you can imagine, travel during COVID was the worst possible industry to be in. I was very lucky; I was still employed, and I just didn't have a whole lot to do. So I really, threw myself into everything. Right, most of our pregnancy was during the COVID experience. We basically found out we were pregnant, and then a month later, the world shut down. So I had an unbelievable amount of time on my hands, and really just I think I'm like you in some ways where I wanted to do the research, right? I wanted to find out what is best, what are some of the things that I think maybe people don't know about in this space. And having just, as I said, all this great time on my hands and really got to kind of immerse myself in this experience of trying to mentally prepare myself to be a dad. And one of the things, obviously, like many, I was worried about sleep because you talk to so many people who have babies or about to have babies, or even the people who 30 years ago had babies, and you still see this look in their face where they're like, those days, man, those were, get your sleep now while you can. And just, it was such a constant theme of, there's all the things that you expect about being a parent and, changing a diaper or whatever, all these things. But it was clear that that was the one experience that people really stayed with them, of the sleepless nights. And then the thing that really, kind of, I don't know, upset me, but was interesting to me was how few people had, it was just like, it's what you do, right?
Yeah,
Suck
just
it up.
taken for granted that you don't sleep for a year.
Exactly.
Like, what?
That just can't be true, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
just way there's nothing you can do. And we started doing what I think a lot of people do, and you didn't ask for this, but, one of my big pieces of parenting advice when people ask is talk to people you respect, like
Mhm.
if there's somebody whose advice you would value in any other domain and they have kids, there's a really good chance they have good parenting advice. And if there's people who you would never listen to their advice ever in a million years, why would so anyway, what I
That's
learned
like how I
along.
pick my podcast guests, by the way, is like either subject matter expert like you or like they're just a smart dude who's a
Yeah,
dad. And it's
and
like,
also,
I wanna hear what he thinks. Yeah.
well, I mean, like, I think curiosity is good, and but it's just fun, right? You have that guy who's like, oh, nothing in his life is ever easy. No, he doesn't make anything look good, and it was like, but yet he has a million things for you. Of like, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I'm like, well, maybe a grain of salt. But one of the things I remember hearing that was kind of consistent when I'd bring up this sleep thing was, have you heard of the SNOO? Like, have you heard of this thing? Like, there actually is this device that can help you get more sleep, and it's science backed, and it's created by a pediatrician and MIT and all these, and you start to look about. So I really just tried to dig in and figure out what might help. And then fast forward, and we had our daughter, and I did get the SNOO. And it felt like, the first thing that you hear from a lot of people is like, oh, that one's like really expensive. That's like the fancy one. It's like really luxury. And now I will once again caveat that I do work here now. But at the time I did not, and started really crunching those numbers of saying, what is a good night's sleep worth to you?
Yeah.
Also, the fact that I knew I was going to have more, or at least the hope was we were going to have more than one child. So you start to, think about, okay, the long tail, if I buy one now, I use it 2 or 3 times. And also for 6 months, if I can get an extra hour or two of sleep every night, I guarantee you when I'm 6 weeks in and I'm just dying, I'd be like, just take my credit card. I don't
Pay
care.
anything. Yeah. Like I would just
Yeah.
pay for sleep if we could. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot cheaper than a night nanny. So,
That's exactly, and that was a big part of it too, is we started to talk to people who have those night nurses and those night
yeah.
nannies. And I was like, you're paying, I don't know, $100 a night, $200 a night, whatever the number is. And I go, that's not what this new costs. So
So
we
did you
we
buy
got
it
it.
before you had the baby or you waited to see?
No, so we bought it before.
Okay. So you were
Yeah,
ready. You were like, you
yeah,
didn't
oh
just
yeah,
throw
we
it
wanted to
away.
be prepared.
Yeah.
So bought the SNOO before, and then had our daughter, and it worked just as well as I ever could have imagined. And then it worked so well that I became such an annoying evangelist to all, my friends and my network. And then when the time came, I ended up actually having, it's kind of a, connection, working through some connections, and met some people at the company, and was just so impressed that I was like, I want to work here. I want to work here. I really want to find a way to do this. And so now been here for about 4 years. So my daughter is a little past 5, but been here for about 4 years, and actually was here when my son was born. And that actually was an interesting experience, because that time I felt pressure, because I was like, the first time it worked, but who cares? I didn't work here. And this time I was like, what if it doesn't work? I was like, am I going to have to lie to everyone? And luckily it honestly worked probably even better. My son's an even better sleeper than my daughter is, and he's just past 1 right now. So
You
it's
say it
been
worked.
fun.
Describe how it worked. Like, what did you expect it to do? What did it do?
Yeah, I think, there's 2 things to definitely know about SNOO. One is, so you talked about the 5 S's, but really it takes a lot of those concepts of replication of a womb-like environment, and doing it in a robotic way. So you're asleep, and everyone knows babies love to be rocked and held and shushed, and babies love to feel that, that experience. And you should do it all day long. When you're awake, you should rock and hold and shush your own baby, and you should snuggle and you should cuddle. You should do as much as you possibly can. It's not fun to have to do that all night, every night. And there are a lot of parents out there who are bouncing on balls or walking around their house. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, you want something else, right? You want somebody to help you do that. And really that's what SNOO has become. In some ways, it almost is like a robotic night nurse that will rock and hold and shush your baby. And then the beauty of SNOO is that it's responsive. So as your baby starts to cry and fuss, if your baby's in your arms going ballistic, you don't keep going, right? You start to walk around the room, you bounce a little, you jiggle a little bit. And that's what SNOO will do. So for increasing levels of sound and motion, it all works really quickly. So it's about a minute to go through
So
that.
it senses if the baby's more agitated and then rocks or shushes more.
Correct. Yeah. So
Huh.
it'll pick up to actually meet the baby's needs. So yeah, there's sensors and microphones inside the bed that will will pick up on that. So basically that fussiness, to do what you would do, to mimic that caregiver experience. And in the early stages, right, to continue us. And I know you've talked about this, but really that womb-like experience. So you think about a baby in utero, it's really, really tight in there, right? It's basically naturally swaddled all the time. It's
Mhm.
really loud. It's about the sound of a vacuum cleaner for 9 consecutive months. And it's always in motion. So babies never experience stillness. And then what most parents do is the day their baby's born, or I should say the day they come home from the hospital, they put their baby on their back, position they've never been, with all this crazy room to move around. They've never experienced that, and it's completely still and completely silent. So really what, Dr. Karp, our founder, created with the 5 S's and then built into the SNOO was this idea of replicating the womb, give them that sound, that motion. And really, your 1 day old baby is way, way, way more like the fetus it was yesterday than the, 6 month old, 1 year old it will become. So its sleep situation and its comforting situation is much different, and should be more like that womb environment and less like that bed environment that we're going to get to eventually. So yeah, it's a pretty incredible little product. If it doesn't work in about a minute, it actually shuts off. So it's not like you can't just go away for the weekend. You can actually see like a screen. It'll show you your sleep log every single night. It'll show where SNOO had to intervene. And if it doesn't work, that's great. It's process elimination. Now it's a diaper change. It's hunger. It's something else. So go be a parent. But in the middle of the night, a lot of times it does what most parents are used to doing, which is they pick up baby. It doesn't necessarily need anything, right? It's not every time. It's not a bottle. Every time it's not a poopy diaper. Sometimes it's just that general fussiness, right? And SNOO rocks, holds, shushes, puts your baby back to sleep. And instead of you having to, put the baby down like you're diffusing a time bomb and back out of the room, it does it for you. And you slept through the entire experience. And as a parent, when you wake up this happened a lot. We'd wake up in the morning and be like, oh my God, she slept 7 hours. She slept 8 hours. And then we'd look on our sleep log. She actually woke up twice, but we didn't, right? And then, Harvey always describes it's like when you're on the express lane, like you're on the HOV lane and you're just zooming past people and
Yeah.
you're like, man, I feel pretty smart. I feel pretty
Suckers! Yeah.
exactly.
And so 7, 8 hours, at what age would they
Well,
sleep
so
through?
yeah, I mean, in the early phases, right, you can. Yeah, that would be
Yeah, they're feeding at least, once or twice in the very
yeah.
early, and then they could switch to once,
Exactly. So I think in the early stage, especially you feed your baby until they get to their birth weight. Snooze, I still found it really helpful. And I'll get to the safety piece in one second because it's funny. We've come this far and I haven't mentioned the most important part. But in the early stages, maybe it gets you an extra 20 minutes, 30 minutes, which is still great.
weight in gold,
But
man. Yeah,
exactly,
every
but you're
minute
not.
counts.
Yeah, but you're not going from 2 hours to
And
six
that's
hours.
early stages, like 3 weeks, 6
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, I would say, the first probably month or so, you could kind of expect you're waking up,
Yeah,
you're feeding your baby, feed them constantly. They're hungry, never ignore. Don't, like just feed your baby.
yeah. Both
But
partners
once
on full time, like, you're doing nothing else all day long, all night long, yes.
pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, those babies, they need a
yeah.
lot.
That first
Uh,
month, 6 weeks is yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah, I
great.
remember we had our pediatrician who was at the 100 days of hell, and I was like, no, that's way too long. That's way too long. You don't need that. But, the first 10 days of hell, like, all right, there's not much we can do.
Yeah,
But
for
yeah, it's
40 days, the 4th trimester, as they say, is about 40 days.
yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
would say 100 days is if it was only that, maybe you could get through that, but you're saying, like, even that is we
I mean, I just think
shouldn't take
that's
that for granted.
yeah, wait, you don't it doesn't have to be 100
Yeah,
days.
let's that's I agree, like, anything that can be made easier made easier, so,
Yeah.
so for about a month, it's pretty constant, they're up all the time, like you said, maybe you get an extra 30 minutes because the snoo, but most of the crying is they need something, they're hungry, they need diaper change, they wanna be held, or some people co-sleep during that phase.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't typically recommend that, and I'm certainly not a doctor, so I want to make that very clear. But I think one of the things, so getting to the safety of what really is the genesis of SNOO, the reason SNOO exists. So our founder, I'll come back to Harvey again, but he was a pediatrician in Los Angeles for 30 years. He was a professor, and then he was a best-selling author. He wrote Happiest Baby on the Block and Happiest Toddler on the Block. So he was a retired doctor living a really good life, getting paid to speak and write. But the reason SNOO was invented in the first place, everyone thinks of us for sleep, and I think that's what we become famous for. But the genesis of everything was safety. When you see the SNOO, what you have to do is you actually clip the baby in on the side. So we have a proprietary sleep sack. There's wings that come out of the sleep sack and you clip them in on the side. And what that does is it prevents babies from rolling over. So it keeps babies safely on their back throughout the night. So about 3,500 American babies a year, otherwise perfectly healthy, die in their sleep every year. And that stat alone is alarming, but was really alarming to Harvey and to our company is that number really hasn't changed in about 30 plus years. And you think about the American healthcare system, it's not that everything always gets better, right? But someone's always working on solutions. And it felt like this was this one problem where the American Academy of Pediatrics said we should put babies on their backs. I believe that was the early 90s. And that was the first time, once they started to recommend to parents that you should put your baby on your back, there was a bit of a decrease. And then since then, nothing has changed. And what Harvey realized was, if we could secure babies on their back, we should be able to do something about this. If the number one cause is dangerous rolling, we should be able to eliminate the number one cause. So SNOO has now been measured. We've now measured over 800 million hours of safe sleep. Hundreds of thousands of babies have used SNOO. If you don't clip in properly, SNOO does not work. If the clips become disengaged, SNOO does not work. You get an alert on your phone that says, baby needs you, go clip it in, and then you can start it. So it's actually now
You wouldn't want it shaking them and then tossing
that's
them to
exactly
the
right.
side accidentally. Yeah.
And there are beds on the market, right, that move, right? They move, but they don't secure, which in our eyes is actually probably increasing the risk. So what SNOO does is secures the baby before any motion is added. So with that, we received FDA de novo authorization in March of 2023. So we actually are classified as a class 2 medical device, meaning SNOO is now in over 200 hospitals across the country. So I think when I always come back to, okay, what's the big
Pretty
difference?
safe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right, that sleep element, obviously, but the safety element, and you just think of the
It's
mental.
got its own swaddle, like you swaddle it, and then the
Yep,
swaddle has clips. So that's one of the
exactly.
S's is swaddle, right? You tighten them up like they're in the
In the straight jacket.
womb. Yeah, exactly. And then and our daughter really liked to move her hands, so we had like an arms up swaddle. Is there
Yep.
an option for that for her
There
to?
is, yeah. So there's
Yeah.
armholes. There's armholes, so you don't have to do the full swaddle. You can
Oh,
release
nice.
arms if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we always recommend is in the early stages, full swaddle, and then release one arm, release the other, and go through more of that like weaning process. But you
Yeah.
certainly, if some babies just hate it, so like go for it. Get the arms
We
out
did
if
the
that.
arms up swallow because then it still teaches them from scratching themselves. I don't know how common that is for babies to actually scratch themselves, but that's like one of the concerns is that in their
Yeah.
sleep they like scratch themselves. And so she loved the arms up swaddle. And then ours also often had like a little like diaper change. You could like leave him swaddled while you change the
Yeah.
diaper.
Yeah. We
Does
have that.
the
Yes, you
SNOO
can.
work for that? Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, yes, you can zip up from either direction, which
Oh,
is
that's
nice.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. I don't have to redo that every single time. Honestly, it's fun when people talk about, okay, what are you unprepared for babies? For some reason, I was like, I get it. They poop a lot. Like you do a lot of diaper changes. And I was like, I weirdly was prepared for that. I was not prepared for how much they puke. Like the
Oh
spit
yeah.
up. I was like, oh my, this never stops.
Yeah, that's both ends. Yeah, and then the breast milk poop is not so bad. It gets real bad when they start the solids. So
Oh yeah.
once they start eating our baby foods, the grass fed bison poops.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say, you're
That's
like, you're a product. That creates,
but it's
you,
good. It's a good thing. You want a
I
good
was gonna
pooping
say
baby. I
it.
mean, that's like the
It's healthy, but
yeah.
it's definitely a bigger
Yeah,
cleanup
for
job.
sure. So it's got the swaddle, which is one of the S's. The shaking, obviously, or swaying, I think
Yep.
was one of the S's. So it rocks itself, and then it's got the shushing. It's got the sound. Those are three S's. The side you on the
Side.
others would be side lay. So how's that play in here if it's
So that,
on the
yeah,
back?
so that one doesn't, which is a great question because yeah, you're right. If you have I would say that's the one S that's like not really in the SNOO, but it's able to to kind of overcome that with the rest of everything else.
Mhm.
And baby they can move their head like they're completely unencumbered. So like some babies will kind of turn onto the side, but really the safety was the most important, right?
So
So
we'll change that to safe laying for that
I
S
like that. I
for
like
this
that.
new.
Yeah, we're going with forget
Yeah.
about side. We're going safety.
Safe laying, and then sucking, which obviously you would never want them in going to sleep with something in their mouth. So that's more for like a colic
Yeah.
crying, not for sleeping anyway.
Yeah, and so I think too, like the core concepts of SNOO are the same as the 5S's, but how it's actually done is not necessarily the same. And I think there's always right that the manual, and it's why robots exist, right? They can do this forever. So, the 5 S's is amazing, but once again, having to do that during the day, it's like a party trick. It's like, you can't wait to show your friends, watch this. You do all 5, your baby calms down, your baby falls asleep, you feel like a magician. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to do that. So the SNOO is able to to kind of replicate that same experience, and help parents out to
Yeah.
get more sleep.
So I have a standalone video on the 5 S's, and I talk about
Oh,
it in my long sleep episode. But just to review for parents, let me see if I get it right, and you can
all
correct me.
right.
So basically, I'm like holding the baby on the side with the thumb in the mouth. So they got the suckle. So side lay and the suckle, because they love the suckle. Pacifier or anything works also, but I liked the thumb, was really easy. And then you're swaying, right? So you can rock them like as if they're in the womb, and they're swaddled up, so they're super tight. So you swaddle them up first,
Yep.
and then you shush at them, which is kind of a loud shush, right? It's like shh, shh, like a vacuum cleaner, like you said, kind of in
Yep.
a rhythm, and it's magic for stopping crying, for calming them down, for like getting them back to sleep,
Yep.
if they're sleeping. Anything I miss?
No, no, you nailed it. And I think too, right, the side hold, just kind of reiterating that part, is really more for the calming and less for the sleep.
Mhm.
Because you don't want your baby sleeping on their side. But yeah, you nailed it. So it's pretty incredible, right? That sensation of being in the womb is really what it's doing. And it's fun to watch, because you literally see it's like a calming reflex where babies are born with it. And one of the things that we talk about a lot, especially from like our science department, um, is this concept. It really is innate. And you think about why this works so well is babies' heads are enormous. So we have evolved to have gigantic brains, which is great, right? It's what differentiates us from everything else. But the trade-off that we've made from an evolutionary perspective is that we are absolutely useless. Like, our babies are the most useless lumps. And you see animals all over the animal kingdom, and they're born and they can walk right away, and after a day they can run, and they have some survival skills, some awareness. And our babies have nothing at all, because they should still be gestating, right? They should still be in the womb. But if they stayed in the womb, they wouldn't make it, right? Our heads are too big. Mom wouldn't make it. Dad would be fine. Mom wouldn't make it. Baby wouldn't make it. And that's really why this works. Why it's so important to have this, fourth trimester, is because we should have a fourth trimester. And that's why, once again, it sounds weird to say, but treating that baby much more like, that in utero fetus that it really is, rather than, it's not a horse that's running after 24
Mhm.
hours.
So yeah, the head's too big, so it has to come out. So you just purchase the womb from SNOO. Like, this is
Yeah. Yeah.
we're the out of body womb. Yeah. So it's interesting on the head size. Is not to get too off topic, but is your
Yeah.
theory that we're born that early because our brains are so much bigger than those other animals, that like we have to come out
Yeah.
essentially too soon, and develop the rest outside, while our brains can get as crazy smart as humans are?
Yeah, exactly. So we've evolved, right? Our one thing that we have, because we're not the strongest, there's nothing that special about humans, really, right?
We're
It's
pretty weak,
just,
actually. I mean,
yeah.
we would not survive in the wild, like
Yeah, I
like
know you
any
just
time.
saw those things on the internet of like,
Yeah,
100, this versus a man, like whatever the number, you lose. Like, we're gonna
yeah,
lose.
yeah.
But
One gorilla, you're done. Yeah,
outsmart them by
yeah,
inventing things.
yeah.
But yeah, so that really is, the kind of core concept of a lot of this is, yeah, baby, if they stayed much longer, there's no way out. And so we
Yeah.
have evolved to
That's
have
too
these
big.
nice.
My theory, or I don't know if it was mine or someone else taught it to me, that it's to encourage the tribe, like that we are social animal, like we can't survive in the wild. Like, yes, we can outsmart animals, not by ourselves. Eventually they're going to get us. But like as a group, we could create, safety systems and defend ourselves from animals and
Yep.
the winter, and figure out fire and all these things. And so by having extremely dependent babies, it made us have to stay in groups. We couldn't A woman and even just what we think of the family unit
Yep.
today in the wild would
Yep.
not have made it. Like, they couldn't have had a baby and foraged for food and they needed more other humans around. And
Community.
so that
Uh,
built the tribes. That's why humans love babies,
Yeah.
whether they're parents, not parents. You bring a baby into a room, everybody's like, oh, it's a baby.
Yeah, of
We're like
course.
all wired to want to protect our babies because it keeps the tribe together.
Totally. I actually think there's a lot built into, sorry to bring it back, but that a lot of the concepts here are actually that idea, right? It takes a village. People say it takes a village because it takes a village. You are supposed to have your aunts and your uncles and your
Yeah, so
cousins.
they would be rocking and shushing the baby all
That's
night long.
that's exactly right, right? It,
We
it
don't have
wasn't
it, so we gotta hire robots.
we hire robots. We have, and a big part of the reason why SNOO has become popular. It's interesting. People okay, it's like the coastal thing, right? It's really popular in New York and San Francisco and L.A. and it's maybe not as popular at least right now in the heartland. And a lot of people just theorize instantly, like, oh, well, that's where like people have more money. That makes sense. And it's actually interesting when we survey
Less
our
family. Yeah,
Yep, that's exactly right. Why did you move to New York? You didn't move to New York because you had 50 cousins and aunts and uncles. You moved to New York because that's where the best law firm was, or that's where the best entrepreneurial opportunity was.
yeah,
So a lot of people tell us I use SNOO because I don't have I don't have that
yeah.
village.
You
Uh,
stay in Springfield, Missouri, not because of the fancy restaurants,
that's
but
exactly
because your
right.
family's there to help you with your babies. Yeah, that makes sense.
And when you have that baby, you're going, man, I made a good decision.
Yeah.
And before you had the baby, you're going, I really wish I went to New York.
Mhm. And so, we used the Snuggle Me.
Okay.
We didn't know about the SNOO, we couldn't afford it even if we knew about it, we were still in startup phase, but we really like the Snuggle Me, which is like a product that, like, also keeps them on their back,
Mhm.
and can you put a Snuggle Me in there?
Not in the SNOO,
You would
no.
mess it up? Okay, so you can't
Yeah,
have both,
yes,
so they're mutually exclusive,
exactly.
but what do you think of Snuggle Me?
I honestly, I mean, anything that's promoting safe sleep and helping parents, I'm all for. The thing that really does differentiate it, I think we will look back, and I think this resonates a lot when we talk to parents who maybe didn't get SNOO or didn't really understand SNOO. And what I'll tell them a lot of times is, okay, if you take your baby, to, to your friend's house or grandma's house, they live 2 minutes away. Would you ever, just put them on your lap and just drive? You're like, no, of course not. Of course you wouldn't. You would secure them in a car seat. Actually, you'd get arrested if you did that. But you secure them in a car seat. You secure them when you put them in a high chair to eat. You secure them when you put them in a stroller. A lot of the different things babies play with, you secure them. And yet, the single most dangerous place statistically, and also the single place they spend the most time by far, is their crib. And it seems to be the one place that we do not secure these newborn babies. And we just don't think I don't think that's going to be the norm going forward. We really, even if SNOO is not, the ultimate winner of this category, what we've done is pioneered something that I think will be what all parents do in the early stages, which is at its absolute most helpless, at its absolute most vulnerable, the one place that we don't do anything, where we just kind of close and yeah, you get a camera, you get a monitor, but like that doesn't help, right? So the one we just, for most people, leave their baby, close the door and hope for the best, which once again, we don't think is going to be what happens going forward. So this idea of securing your baby in the early phases, is going to be done. And then we've already seen, right? Like white noise machine, for example, 20 years ago, almost nobody did it with their baby. And now it's very common, regardless of if you use a SNOO, regardless if you're a super techie or, innovative, it doesn't matter. A lot of people use white noise machines. Like, so we see this progression happening in the baby space. If there's things that you can do to help your baby sleep. And we believe that, constant rhythmic motion, constant stimulation is going to be a great thing. But we really, really, really believe that safety will become something that every parent thinks about in the future.
Yeah, I think every parent has to figure it out for themselves, what they value and what works for them. On some level, I never like to think of babies as, this really like complicated, tricky thing. Like we've been having babies for 500,000 years. We adopted, obviously we had babies long before there was any kind of technology. In most of our human history, we were having babies in the wild, with in the tribe, like no electricity, no Western medicine. So on some level, pregnancy, birth, postpartum is all extremely natural. Like I found it's actually kind of
Okay.
hard to kill a baby. Like they're
They're
pretty
pretty
resilient.
resilient.
Yeah, babies and toddlers, like, they say they have a death wish. I'm surprised, how you can drop them and they're fine, they fucking bounce, and,
Yeah.
like, there's, like, we're pretty resilient as humans, and so and then
Great.
sleeping with the baby, and there's a lot of, like, intuition moms have around that, and,
Yep.
I think, co-sleeping is something that gets a lot of controversy. Like you said, the science and doctors and stuff are nervous about it, but there's something very intuitive about sleeping with your baby and trusting that you're not gonna, like, roll over and smother your baby, like, you just know, right? Moms just know,
Yep.
and so there's something very close about, like, baby sleeping with families, but so, like, I think that's a cool thing, but it just isn't for everyone. Like, our baby didn't really like it. She wanted to move around a lot, and, like, she was very physical and just seemed to sleep better without us. Like, we tried co-sleeping, and it wasn't us that didn't like it, like, the baby just didn't like it.
Yeah, you
And,
want
like,
it
of
more.
course, my wife and of course, it disrupts our sleep, so, like, co-sleeping is something that isn't for every parent, like,
Yeah,
it just is hard to sleep it just can be disruptive, and so then it's like, okay, so we're not gonna if they're not gonna have our system to calm them and rock them, it's sort of like in this modern society that is so disconnected from how we lived for thousands of years, how do we use technology to mimic what would have been in nature? Nature's not quiet.
no, it's
There's
not.
crickets and owls and, like, there's noise in the woods, right? So they're sort of mimicking that noise. Co-sleeping, you do move, you're rolling around and you're moving your sleep, and so, like, kinda mimicking that. So, like, I can see, there being some value to that.
For sure. Yeah, no, and I think you're right. It's to each their own is definitely part of this. And there's certain things, right, where you can't it's not everything needs to be hacked, right? Not everything needs to be like biohacked. But I think and this is I guess I'll say more me personally than, from a company perspective. But to me, the kind of ultimate is always how do I avoid the absolute worst case scenarios? Um and there's a lot of things that you want, it's like it's when your kids get a little older, you want them to have some risky behavior, right? You want them on the playground testing things, testing their limits. Like I don't want to bubble wrap my kids. But if there's things that I can do to avoid, the kind of absolute worst, and then also really, really harness and help, because one of the things the SNOO does is it does help sleep train, right? It helps babies connect those sleep cycles so that they
Mhm.
know how to sleep longer. There's a lot of, research that we're doing in terms of, the number one cause of postpartum depression, for example, is exhaustion. And a lot of moms who just say like the mental health load of, I can't do this all. There's a lot of parents that say they had one baby, they expected they were going to have more, but the sleep was so bad that they didn't want to have a second kid, right? So there's so many different things that I could see in my future of saying, if this doesn't go well, I could, right? Am I going to quit my job? Am I going to suck at my job? Does my wife not want to have a second baby? It's just all these things that kind of go through your mind, where to me, it was the logical conclusion was because there's a lot of, I'm not going to bash anybody specifically, but there's a lot of baby products out there that I do think are useless. And I do think are preying entirely on parental fear. And it's saying, if you don't get this, this is terrible things going to happen.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of
this was,
fear-mongering. There's so much fear. I mean, moms
oh
are
my
the
God.
fear center of the brain gets bigger when moms have babies, so, like, there's so much fear. So anything that alleviates fear, like, I think is useful. So something like the snoo makes you sleep better at night, literally, if it makes you feel
Yeah.
better versus like, "Oh, I'm nervous, I'm strapping them in, and every time I do it, I'm feeling nervous that something's gonna go wrong, and if they ever aren't strapped in, we're in a hotel, they're gonna die." So that's where it's like, you have to, like, feel like what of those devices actually reduce fear versus encourage fear. So that's
Sure.
something every dad needs to figure out with his
Yeah.
or himself and his partner. But definitely the exhaustion, anything that helps sleep. I mean, we use the Snuggle Me. We also use the Fisher Price rocker,
Okay.
which I'm sure you get asked a lot
I think
about.
that one maybe got recalled.
Yes, there was a whole recall on those, and you did strap them in. I don't think we ever actually strapped them in, so it's funny you say, "You better strap them." Like, I
Yeah.
even the high chair, like, I would barely strap them in the stroller. Strap them in the car seat, that's what that I do,
RC,
but
yeah.
the
Yeah, and
stroller, I'll leave, like, one strap maybe, she wasn't inclined to jump out. Like, some kids are, like, really, like they're, like our daughter was pretty safe, so
yeah,
but
I'm
the Fisher
starting to
Price
see
thing, yeah,
the
we rocked them and, like, it was just a very basic rocker, like, it wasn't smart, it's, like, had a little thing that just made itself rock,
yeah.
and I don't know what was dangerous about those, but those got, like, all
Well,
recalled, I guess
I think,
babies
Rex, it,
died.
it, it does it does relate to this idea, right? Of more motion actually makes it more likely that you will roll over, and the whole thing we're trying to prevent is that.
Yeah.
Like most good ideas, because oh, that was so obvious in retrospect. But something that, when you see the SNOO and how it works, the clips. So the FDA says you can't have belts, fasteners, ropes of any kind inside a bassinet because of the strangulation risk. So the idea of securing your baby, I don't think that's like no one would have ever thought of that, but it was the mechanism to actually do it that would get regulatory approval. So a lot of these other companies that they have motion, right? They have motion. There's nothing unique about motion and sound, but if you have motion and sound and no security, it could potentially lead to, a more dangerous environment rather than a safer environment. So what we wanted was to give you more sleep, but also more peace of mind.
Hmm. I had a old bassinet my grandpa made, that was cool, but it didn't rock, so my dad and I rigged up an electric drill
No way.
to make it rock, and it was, like, really, like, janky. Our daughter loved it because she just, like it was like a roller coaster, But, like, in hindsight, it would never have
Yes.
worked for sleep, like, she would have definitely been knocked on her side, like, there
Yeah, I
was
was gonna say, sounds like a pretty fun toy though.
it was sort of a or like I said, they use the electric mixer and the car seat thing. Have you ever seen those?
Yep.
You tie up the mixer to the car seat. At least they're strapped in the carrier
Yeah.
for that, but that's pretty elaborate. You can't do that all the time.
Well, and that's right.
Yeah.
Most people probably aren't gonna go to those lengths.
But it
But
doesn't respond. I mean, what's so interesting is it doesn't change based on what the baby's doing. So you guys kind of have really the Tesla of of
I
of of cradles. So you
yeah.
probably said that before.
Yeah, I always like that. It is one of those things when you even look around because you're like, yes, babies haven't changed that much. Babies are babies. But you look around your nursery and you go, we have figured out better ways. Every single thing in your nursery has been like, iterated and improved upon over the past however many years. Basically, everything in your room is probably better than it was 10 years ago. And yet, a lot of people when they put their baby to sleep, it's like it's not that different than like a caveman, where it was basically find a box and put baby in it, and then hope for the best.
Hmm.
So that
And
was the kind
is
of
there a monitor included? Can you hear?
so there isn't. Yeah, it doesn't come with like a
So
camera
you
built
still would
in.
use a monitor, whether camera or
Yeah,
some people still just use audio, but if you
yeah,
want a
and
camera
so the average baby is in SNOO for about 6 months. So something we found is, and because that is a requested feature, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but at the end of 6 months, you still need
you
a
still
monitor.
need a monitor, so you would need it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So what most people do is buy a quality monitor that
And
they're
you
going
need
to
one when they're a teenager too, I hear. That's like
exactly.
you
Well, we
probably don't wanna watch it, but,
yeah, exactly. My daughter is 5, and we still absolutely we got the sound machine, we have
Oh,
the
you still use
monitor.
the monitor? You still use the monitor? Our daughter, like, hated that camera. She figured it out real fast and was like, "I want this out of my room." Like,
That day's got to be
somehow she
coming
knew.
soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she somehow knew that we were watching her.
'Cause
So, like
how old's your daughter?
she's 7 now, and it was at about, like, 3 or 4. I'd had a light on it, she didn't like the light, so we
Yeah.
covered up the light, but then she still would be like, "I see that thing watching me."
Yeah.
So we got a little secret camera, we're like, I got, like, a hidden one, but we never ended up using it, she didn't need it, but so you would use a video or audio monitor separately. How do you use the monitor in along with the SNOO? Like
Well, and so
yeah.
what we did, and I think what most parents do actually is usually like we had the SNOO in our room, so we didn't
Mhm.
really need the monitor.
Yeah,
We had the SNOO real close to us.
yeah.
Honestly, when we moved, it's funny. We moved it out of our room when our daughter transitioned out. I actually started using. We have a sound machine that mimics. So you can use it to help with the transition, and I started using it for myself because I was like, "Oh, I missed that noise." Like, it was
Mhm.
kind of nice
We
having.
still sleep with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
most people I'd say keep SNOO in their room, so that's like not really a big concern in terms of the monitoring. But yeah, otherwise you just get a camera, place it kind of how you would for any normal crib, any other type of sleep
But then
environment.
how do you know when to go in? Like, if they
Yeah, so
is it gonna maybe you don't need to do anything, like, how long do you wait?
yep. So it'll shut off in just over a minute or so if it doesn't work. So it's not a lengthy process. It's actually it is this nice process of elimination. So SNOO will actually just shut off, and you get an alert on your phone that will say, SNOO shut down, baby needs you, and we have this amazing app as
That
well.
kinda works as a monitor.
It does. It
If you
really
wanted it
does.
to, you could have it audio wake you up,
Yep.
say, "SNOO says baby's crying and is unconsolable."
And that's exactly right. You'll probably
Yeah.
and if the baby's in your room, like you'll probably hear
Yeah,
it.
you'd notice. But otherwise, if it starts crying and it wakes you up a little, you just sort of wait. And then if it goes away, you go back to sleep.
Yep, and that happens all the time. And honestly,
Yeah.
it'll kick into. I'm a pretty so my wife would probably give you a different answer, but I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. So like those little, the kind of starting to cry, there's
The
like
murmurs, yeah.
yeah, the murmurs and the kind of frustration, like that doesn't wake me up.
It
Uh
hears it, but you don't.
SNOO hears it.
You don't hear the SNOO go louder, it doesn't make a lot extra
No,
noise or
it's
anything?
I mean, it's not that loud, right? It's
Uh-huh.
a gradual process to get up, and yeah, not typically enough that I would say would wake somebody who's like really asleep. But yeah, the babies cry. If once they start going, of course, you're gonna wake
Yeah,
up.
we always had the baby in the room, and then one of the things what biggest sleep hacks we used was, not sleeping together, like alternating nights.
I remember
So
you saying that, which I like.
I would take the baby in the guest room, and sleep there one night, and then the baby'd sleep with my wife the other night, and we would alternate nights, and we did that for many, many years. I mean, even when she had her own room, we would trade who had the monitor, or even if we were sleeping together, it was, like, decided who was gonna get up, so there wasn't this discussion about it, and then one of us always got every other night a good sleep, which really makes a big difference
It
to
does,
be
right? Once you start
uninterrupted.
stacking those bad nights,
Yeah.
it's
Even
well,
when she was breastfeeding, I would just bring her to breastfeed, and it would wake her up a little bit to breastfeed, but then I would do the rest, and
yeah,
then on her nights, I could sleep all the way, and then once we could start pumping and I could bottle feed, then at least
that
one of the
was
feedings I could bottle feed, or if she had to wake up to pump, at least she did it on her own time. She'd wake up naturally, pump, go back to sleep. It wasn't on the baby's time, and so that helped a ton, and we still alternate nights. Like, our daughter's an amazing sleeper, doesn't wake us up anymore, but, like, there's a sign on the door if where to go, and, like, in the morning or at night, if she needs something, she knows which room to go to if we're sleeping apart.
That's so great. Well, because it always kills. One of the things that bothers me so much when you hear like dads being like, "Nothing you can do," and be like, "Of course, there's something you can do." Like, just because you can't breastfeed, that doesn't mean you can't help. And it's the biggest kind of cop out. I think it's your wife went through a lot carrying that baby, right? The least you could do is try and do something.
Yeah.
And one thing we found that really, and I know I'm once again me, like I know some medical people like nipple confusion. I'm not going to speak to any of that, but what we found, so we breastfed as much as possible. But we would pump to have a bottle in the middle of the night. So there's
Yep.
always a pumped bottle in the fridge. And what I would do when we did like the dream feed is I would just stay awake. And so my
Oh,
wife could go to bed as
interesting.
she could go to bed as early as she wanted.
Yeah.
And then that dream feed would usually be, let's say 11. And this was only for, a relatively short period of time, but 11-ish, 12-ish at the latest. So wake baby up, do the dream feed, put the baby back to sleep, and then I would go to bed. And then whatever happened, happened. But like, my wife would take care of anything except for that feed. And to me, it wasn't that big a deal to stay up, even though maybe it wasn't the best every night, but for a relatively short period of time to stay up till midnight so I could sleep from 12 to whatever was not the worst.
Yeah.
So that was, yeah, one of our little tricks.
Yeah, so let's walk through the timeline so dads can know what to expect. Obviously, no sleep for a year is like the awful worst case scenario. Let's talk like sort of best case scenario, or maybe what you'd say the average SNOO user, or even just your
Yeah.
own experience. But for about a month, they're waking up all the time. You have to feed them, you have to change their diaper. Like, they're getting back up to weight. They're like, that's kind of the fourth trimester, right? They're
Yep.
still needing a lot. But so a month is fairly like, okay, you're going to get woken up a lot. So then after a month, then what could we expect?
Yeah, I think something we were really regimented, and this obviously, as you can tell, is something we cared a lot about, was we wanted to optimize and try and maximize our sleep to the best of our ability. So a lot of it is routine, right? A lot of it is things like wake windows during the day and what you're doing during the day. Like, all of that stuff matters. So you can't just say, put in the SNOO and everything's going to work. Put in the SNOO and everything's going to work better than it would have if you didn't have a SNOO. But I still think, right, there's other things to take into consideration.
We'll come back to that. So let's,
Yeah.
assuming they're doing these things, which
Yeah.
we're going to talk
Yeah.
about in a minute, then if they do that and they have the SNOO, like, what is the
Yeah. So, and
yeah.
we have being a connected device, we have an enormous amount of research. So, in the early phases, and once again, hundreds of thousands of babies have now used SNOO. In the early phases, you could probably expect, even in those early phases, right? That 20 to 30 minutes, which does matter. It is really nice. It gets you from, let's say, 3 hours to 3.5, or 2.5 to 3. So probably correct it roughly the first 3 to 4 weeks. A little bit more, but not big. And then what's amazing is the gap. And I can send you some graphs, but the gap starts to really widen as you hit up to like that 1, 2, 3 month curve. So by about 2 months of age, the average baby in SNOO will sleep almost 7 hours as their longest consecutive sleep stretch, whereas the average baby not in SNOO, you can expect about 5. And then the next month, 3 months, the average baby in SNOO, it'll be closer to 8, where the average baby is about 6. So that's when you really start to get those nice, 2-hour difference between, the expectation. And something that's really important about that too, and this is obviously a different topic, but unfortunately in America, the parental leave system is not that great. And 99+% of Americans go back to work in under 6 months. Like 6 months is basically unheard of. So it's really more, you're more likely talking about 2 to 4 months. So what's amazing is in that first month where you're still getting more sleep and you're certainly getting that mental health component of knowing my baby's safe. That's nice. But what it's really nice is you're going back to work at month 2 or month 3, and now you're getting 7 instead of 5, right? Or 7.5 instead of 5. And it's really that kind of restorative sleep to help with productivity. And honestly, it's just pure health too. We know the longer you sleep, the better you sleep. Your immune system functionality is better, right? Everything is connected to a better sleep. So it will make you we believe, right, a better husband, a better employee, a better, you are more likely to go to the gym, to eat healthy. It's kind of that impulse control stuff that is also tied to a good night's sleep.
Yeah, save your marriage. I mean,
If you're married,
you
nice.
stop fighting as much. I mean, I can't believe how much conflict comes from 2 sleep deprived, irritable, like, how much was that worth? I'll
It
pay
does, right?
anything to not fight with my wife, man.
Because we train, like, you can't train people to endure torture by torturing them, because that's not very moral, but they use sleep deprivation, right,
Yeah,
to endure torture. And
yes,
they'll literally play the sound of babies crying over loudspeakers. That's how Navy SEALs will like it.
that's
And
great.
so every parent is kind of going through like a light basic training to be a Navy SEAL, which isn't what most people sign up for,
Yeah, that's
or at least
crazy.
they don't think they sign
So
up
do
for.
you have you have data of SNOO users versus non-SNOO users? Do you also have data of SNOO users that use other tactics like you were just saying? Like, so that is there an incremental benefit that you can track?
We have a lot of study. That's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that one directly, but one thing we've seen a lot of, which I think is really interesting, is a lot of our research is in hospitals. We have nurses, for example, who have said the snooze saves them on average about 2 hours per shift. So, and there's 2 shifts in a day, so it's over 4 hours a day in time savings. Because one of the things that they say is, we think about a nurse, especially in like a NICU ward with really fussy babies, they spend an unbelievable amount of their day simply swaddling, rocking, shushing these babies down. And now they don't have to do that, right? They just have to swaddle the baby, put it into SNOO, and SNOO will take care of it. And so we've seen this, from extrapolating from that, we now have a whole bunch of medical professionals who are less exhausted, but also more importantly, doing like the top line work that they should be doing.
Hmm.
Because, that's the rocking, shushing, swaddling you don't need to go to 4 years of school for that, or 8 years of school for that. So I think we just have a lot of research of how this does help. And so how I extrapolate that data is a lot of times for a parent, just at home even, right? People think of SNOO for sleep, and they should, but there also is this idea, I know this would happen to me a lot, where, if I'm home, my wife's at the gym or something, and I'm home alone with the baby, and you're like, I gotta pee, like, there's nowhere safe to put this baby. Like nobody has really thought about this. So, you're constantly holding it. I was like, the fact that I can just put the baby down in the SNOO, clip it in, and I know that I bought myself, 2 minutes to like go pee and then make a sandwich. Like, that's enormous, right? And
Mhm.
so it has all these other nice little effects too that are not just I get a little bit more sleep. I know that didn't like perfectly answer the question, but just to give you a sense of kind of
Yeah,
the
4
broad.
hours a day. I mean, ask any new mom if they'd
Yeah,
like 4 hours extra a day. Woo.
I don't think you're getting 4 in the at home environment, but you're certainly, yeah, maybe if you have triplets.
Yeah. And so, okay, so other sleep training tactics. What are some things they can do?
Yeah, so certainly I think, the routine, I've heard you talk about this, and I just like, couldn't agree more. And I started like as early as possible, was things like the sleep cues, right? So music. And this is always like an embarrassing time of year at the end of the year, because you get your Spotify or your like Apple Music and you see what songs you played. There was something about, I just think like James Taylor has like the most soothing voice ever. So I'll start the bedtime, we put James Taylor's greatest hits, and that's like kind of triggers, okay, now we're starting this bedtime routine. So when I see my Spotify Wrapped, and like, what songs did you listen to last year? And it was like 8 billion hours of James Taylor. Um, so, there's certain things like that routine. If we try and do the same things at the same, we try and read the same books to really just trigger. And obviously as you get older, we read a million different books. We have a whole bunch of variety, but even in the really early stages, we tried to do the same type of cues at roughly the same time. And then those wake windows I do think are super important, where if you can make sure that your baby is having, right, they're playing and they're interacting and they're getting a lot of the good things they need while they're awake, and making sure that everything's kind of on this like time schedule. And I know that's not always doable, but to try and stick to it the best that you can in those early phases just sets up like this healthy foundation. Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's some of the stuff that we've tried to do.
And you had said something about during the day, like nap schedules and how
Yeah,
to
I
do
mean,
it. Yeah.
it's when you have like, oh, never wake a sleeping baby, and sleep when baby sleeps, and all these things that, other generations have said, and like, oh, like most of that is fundamentally flawed. And the newborn stage is kind of its own thing, but as you get a little bit older, the 2 months old, the 3 months old, 3 month old, I don't want them taking a 5-hour nap in the middle of the day. That's like lunacy. Of course, they're not going to have a good sleep at night. So there are certain, there are certain windows of time that have basically been proven to be better, right? So if you can keep and you've talked about this a lot too, right? Getting sunlight, really important. Try and get even babies, right? Get them in the
Yeah.
stroller, get them
Yeah,
outside,
circadian rhythms,
get circadian
sunlight
rhythm.
in the morning, yeah.
Yep.
But, like, as far as nap schedules, and if you don't know it by heart, is there a
Yeah.
resource for, like, how much they should be sleeping during the day and what times is best if someone wanted
Yeah.
to get a little sciencey about it?
Definitely. So I would go to, I know our blog is amazing. So we go to the Happiest Baby blog. It's fantastic. There's this woman taking care of babies. I remember my wife used her. She was on Instagram, and I think a lot of her stuff is the same as Dr. Karp's actually. So, but yeah, I think Happiest Baby on the block, Happiest Toddler on the block has a lot of good sleep tips. So, um, and I think the Happiest Baby blog, and something that's really cool about SNOO as well is our app has a ton of education. And when you first get SNOO, you pair the app to it. You don't have to do this. I think you should. But SNOO does not have to be paired with the app. You don't have to use the Wi-Fi. You can just use like the button. But it'll prompt you to say, what's your baby's birthday? So now the advice we give you, it's kind of like having a pediatrician in your pocket, because we're not saying generic baby advice. We're not saying babies like this. We're saying at 2 weeks old, this is something to expect, or this is something you can do, or this is a great idea. And at 4 weeks old, and it really follows you along through that whole journey, which I found really, really helpful.
Sleep crutches, like, is there any concern that using the
Yep.
robot doesn't teach them good sleep habits?
It's probably the number one question we get. Am I just creating a dependency, right? Or am I solving a short-term problem at the expense of a long-term problem? And luckily, a lot of thought has been put into this. And the number one thing is that weaning mode. So what we recommend is over time, this concept of replicating the womb-like environment makes less and less sense as you get further and further away from the womb. So, I mentioned like the armholes. So start swaddling because that's replicating the womb-like environment, then release an arm, right? Then release another arm. Now we're getting more to like a traditional crib. And then we actually limit the motion. We start to get rid of that, the 4 different levels of rocking and shushing. We can actually start to limit that so it doesn't move quite as much. The sound doesn't go quite as high. The parent can actually override it entirely and just get rid of it. So by the time you actually get closer to being out of SNOO, and we will guide you every step of the way of like what that weaning process is, but we start to remove all of those things that, kind of make SNOO SNOO, and it turns more into this traditional bassinet right by the end. So for example, the motion will actually stop when the baby sleeps. And so like, you're not going to have this constant motion. We never get rid of the sound entirely, but we may get rid of like the responsive nature of the sound. So basically the long story short, the long-winded way of saying we have a full weaning methodology built in.
So do
And
you
then
put in, when you sign in the app, you put in like the age of your baby? And so
exactly.
it just tracks, it knows, as long
Yep.
as you're using it consistently, it knows what stage your baby's at and like
Correct.
starts
Well,
to do that? Does it
yeah.
tell you like, now put the arms out? Like,
Yep.
it
Yeah.
tells you
So
all that?
it's super prescriptive to help
So
you. Of like,
cool.
this
So
is
it's
a
like a
recommendation.
automated sleep training device that uses babies. Does it incorporate the baby's responses too, or is it just age?
Just age, but you learn a lot about the
Yeah,
patterns. So you'll
sure.
see every single night, okay, they started to wake up here, or honestly, some babies like they don't like when it goes to the highest motion. So you can just
Mhm.
say, I don't want you to do that.
You can
Um,
just tell that it's sort of,
yep.
yeah,
It's just like,
yeah.
hey, every time it kicks up to that, it never, it just pisses them off more.
You can
Uh,
customize it.
Yep, you can customize, and some parents want to start on a higher level. So like you have a lot of ability, but like we definitely have a prescriptive environment. And then the second part I'll say too is babies' brains actually double in size by the time they're 6 months from the time they're a newborn, which is just the rapid growth is nuts. But a lot of that is regulatory, right? There's certain things they can now do that they couldn't. So something I find really, interesting is a lot of times the baby will tell you like, I'm done here. I'm good. I'm good. Like the things that used to work, they start to resist. And it starts to give you these cues that, okay, now we should really start this weaning method and try and get them into the traditional crib. So it's really uncommon. The only babies that stay more than 6 months are typically premature babies because they should have been in the womb longer. And, just little guys like multiple. So there's certain scenarios where you may stay 7 or 8 months, but it's pretty uncommon.
A lot of my biohacker listeners are concerned about EMFs,
I knew this was
electronic
coming. Yeah.
electronic devices. So obviously there's motor and there's Wi-Fi. So what is y'all's approach? I know that is very
Yeah.
thoughtful. I researched a little bit that you guys have thought about this. So what is
For
the
sure.
approach?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think, we always wanna be, at safety, right? I think we make our whole bones about being safety, and that means
Yeah.
a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To me, once again, the overarching was just I want my baby to literally be the safest from any really terrible outcome. So that was not a huge concern on my part. But what we've done is, one of the things is all the electronics are anything that's kind of important electronically is as far away from the baby's head as possible. So it is, it's not that big of a device, but it's big enough that, we always talk about like if you're on speakerphone, right? You're getting EMF, like there's just we live in a world where it is
Yeah.
unavoidable, but we can do things to try and do the best that we can. Um, you do have the option to not use Wi-Fi. There's a button that can just control it. So you can just use a button and manually control it. So that is one option.
What do you
Uh,
lose if you turn the Wi-Fi off?
sorry, was that?
What do you lose? Like, what can't you do if the Wi
I mean, you lose the ability to do a lot of the customization that I talked about, but the main features still work and the main responsiveness still works, but it just doesn't have the same level of kind of depth of understanding of what your baby's
you
doing.
can turn it back on and change settings and then turn it back off?
Yep.
Or, like, will the alerts will the alerts not work? Like, it
Yeah,
won't
so you
alert
won't get
you?
you won't get the same level of alerts, but
Yeah,
the baby will still, if it goes through those four increasing levels of sound and motion, and once it doesn't work, it will still shut off.
I see.
And it
So
still
the
will not.
basic functionality works at the settings that you leave it if you just don't get the alerts, and if you wanna
Exactly.
change it, you have to turn it back on to change it.
Yeah,
Okay. So the
exactly. But
Wi-Fi
yeah,
stuff helps a little bit, and otherwise, you're saying the motor and the primary electrical devices are at the opposite side of the head?
exactly. So we keep it as far as possible. And I just think it's one of those concerns that we've now been around for, over 9 years. And we've actually seen, from our research, like brain development is potentially greatly improved. And especially, this extra sleep, right? The extra sanity for parents. I just think, if we're not, sorry, we're not going to convince everyone. And I understand that. But that is one of those things that has just been a concern that it honestly never comes up. But I think there's people who maybe come in worried and then by the end are like,
Yeah, I'm not dogmatic about anything. EMFs is one of those things that, it's that, like, logically, we're, electrical robot bodies, electrical waves and radiation probably affects us. Like, it would
yeah,
make sense that it would affect us. It's very hard to measure. We've also been studying radiation for 100 years
yeah,
with nuclear science, and it is not by any means, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt
no,
proven that the type of radiation from electronic devices is harmful. Lots of anecdotal evidence, some scientific studies, so there's a lot of debate about it. A lot of people, it's just like, can you tell it affects you or not? Like, if it does, like, I trust you, do what you need to do for you, for your baby. But yeah, I
yep,
think it starts to become like a cost benefit analysis around like, well, EMF probably does affect us, but then what affects us worse? Like, so if all things being equal, if it's easy to limit them, like turn your Wi-Fi off at night, okay, turn your Wi-Fi off at night while you sleep, but like if it's between 2 extra hours of sleep a night and a little bit of EMFs, like that's sort of like is kind of a no brainer that it would possibly be more beneficial.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's I think you nailed it, right? It's a cost benefit for everybody, and to me, and I think to most parents. Also, it's one of those things where yeah, I've always said I'd love to see what percentage of our sales happen at like 3 o'clock in the morning, because you have these people who are dogmatic and say I would
Yes.
never do this, I would never do this,
I'm
and then
ordering it right now. Yeah,
you're
that's
right,
so
right. You're
funny.
6 weeks in, and you're going, those things I used to think, I don't think them anymore. It's like the old, everyone. What's the Mike Tyson? Everyone has a plan, so you get punched in the face.
Yeah,
Uh,
do what you gotta do, man. Anything that makes it's so many unknowns, there's so many things hard. I'm a big biohacker when it comes to
yep.
babies because it's just there's so much you can't control anyway. If we can make it easier, I say make it easier. Like it's super hard. So,
Yeah, and
uh,
I think, right,
yeah,
that just so being as far as they are from a baby, like, it really does disappear very quickly.
yeah,
And I think you also said, right, every home has exposure, and there's no studies that have proven anything. Uh,
yeah,
and also what I've found, and I mean this, like, very nicely, but there is certainly a level of a spectrum on both sides, right? Of like, I have to be the absolute most natural, and I might never convince you, and that's okay, right? That's okay. But what we found in our research is this is the only FDA authorized device for safety. It's the only bassinet that can claim that we are getting you an extra hour or two of sleep. And for most parents, and the 80%, right, the 10% gone, but for 80% of parents, they're going to hear that and go, I like that. I like that.
yeah.
I want to try that. And then what we're trying to do too is, because, you said, right, it's expensive. That's one of the things that people think about SNOO. So we have a rental model now, which has dramatically reduced the
Yes.
price.
So cool. You can rent it.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense because you only need it, like you said, for maybe
6
6
months.
months. Yeah.
Yep. So 6
So
months you can rent it now, which has dramatically reduced the price, and it makes it more environmentally friendly and sustainable. So there's a lot of other benefits too. But what we're really trying to do is two things. One is corporations, and the other is insurance carriers. So a lot of companies now actually make this a parental benefit.
mm,
So if you work for primarily large companies right now, but we're starting to try and move downstream. But if you work for JP Morgan, or you work for the NFL, or you work for Activision Blizzard and Red Bull and Snapchat and all these companies, if you have a baby, this is part of your parental leave benefits
wow,
package.
that's
So
great.
they'll pay, yeah, they rent it for you, pay for the whole thing, so you get a free SNOO. And obviously, right, it is. I think there's a lot of altruism. We want to take care of our people. It's loyalty. We want this to be the best place to work, but it also is something that product you're
For
going to be.
their workout, yeah. So we'll consider it. I'll look at the thing for our staff because we have a lot
Yeah,
at the baby food company. We're very pride ourselves on our
for sure.
parental leave, and this is like it's tough them to coming back to work after having a baby. And we have these top performers that have a
Oh,
baby, and then we give 4 months leave, which is generous, but it's not enough ultimately. Like they come
yeah.
back at 4 months, and
And
it's tough.
especially
Like
companies.
yeah.
And there's a really interesting, kind of anecdote. I know this will definitely resonate with you, but we speak to a lot of executives at these companies, and it's not that long ago, like 20 years, 25 years. Like, this is a one generation problem, that the average age of a woman who had a baby used to be 24, 25,
Yeah,
26.
now it's like
The
30.
average, yeah,
Yeah,
the average age now, especially
35.
I should say in corporate America, the average age is like closer to 34, 35 now.
Wow. Yeah. And
And
dads too, we have a lot of dads, so we give both we give the leave and the benefits to male
oh,
or female,
absolutely.
so, it'd be fun to rent snooze for the dads too, but
Yep.
we have a primarily female workforce as a baby food company, we have a lot of moms. Other cool devices, what else is out there that you recommend that go well with the snoo?
Okay, good question. All right, so one of the things that I always default to is, like, does this really help me?
Mhm.
Uh, like, does this save me time? So I'll give you one example. So if anyone who does any formula, so we were pretty exclusively, breast milk for as long as we could, and then we started supplementing with formula. And one of the, so I'm sure there's other ones, but we had the baby Brezza.
Thing's
Uh,
amazing.
and I was gonna say, right, like, it's an espresso for baby.
Yeah.
And this is one I'm not gonna claim I've done a ton of research, so it's possible there's other products out there that are just as good. That's the one we had, and it was a similar concept to me of the SNOO, which is, I remember we didn't have it with my daughter. So with my son, we had the Brezza, and I remember with my daughter, one of the big, like, annoying things was, this milk is too cold, right? Or like, this milk is, she's going nuts, and I'm trying to fill it. Is that the right amount? I'm checking. Oh no, it's too cold. Now I'm trying to heat it up. And it was like, it,
Mess.
it was annoying, right? It was it
Sure.
was one of those annoyances. So the fact that I could just push a button and say, this is the perfect amount at the perfect temperature, and it took me
Love the Brezza.
3 seconds.
We have our Fraternity Kids formula has a great setting, so a lot of Fraternity Kids formula users use the Brezza. They
Yep.
also have a portable bottle warmer
Yes.
that works for breast milk too. So,
Yep.
like, if you were carrying breast milk in your cooler, that was I remember getting a cup of coffee and putting the bottle in the coffee, because just what else am I gonna do? Like, you're in an
Yeah.
airport, how do you warm this on the go for a baby, right? So it's like that little Brezza warmer thing is really
It's
cool.
It's amazing, right? And sometimes I do think this is a terrible answer, but sometimes it's like the things that offend your grandparents the most, are often the ones I'm like, there's something to that. Uh,
Yeah,
we're like,
rock and roll, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
we're like, oh, what you would do? Also, this is okay. This is a bit of tangent. Then I want to ask you about, like, that same question to you. But one of my absolute favorites, because we do have people go, I would never use a robot to put my baby to sleep. Like, I can't believe, how could you do that? And then, like, I'll sit there, I'll listen, I'll wait for the crowd, wait for their ramble, and then I go, let me ask you a question. When you had a baby, did you ever put the baby in the backseat of the car and drive around to get them to fall asleep? 100% of people say, oh, of course. Pediatricians always said I would
Yeah.
always do that. And I go, let me tell you what you did. You used the most dangerous robot in America. You operated it while you were tired. You operated it when it was dark, and you used a robot to put your baby to sleep, but you did it in the most dangerous possible fashion. And you'll see the, like, light go on. They go, damn it, he was prepared.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm curious too. I always love this question for parents of, like, I just think if it saves you time, if it saves you money, if it saves you energy, like, what does it actually do? So the Brezza was a good one. We didn't have this, but I've seen those, like, 2-for-1, right? Where it's like a stroller that turns into a car seat. And it makes it easier to travel with. Like, I think those are great because it actually helps you. But yeah, the Brezza was the SNOO and the Brezza were the first thing that came to mind. But I'm curious, like, how you would answer that question.
Yeah, we had the carrier would clip in the base, so we could have a base in both cars, and the carrier would clip in. So that's really nice. So you're not messing with the seat belts and all this
Yep.
stuff. You just pick them right out and you carry them around. And then you had the stroller that it clipped into, so it would go all into the stroller. I love that thing, that
Yep.
three-piece unit. We really liked the bottles that turned into sippy cups. So it was like all one. Uniformity was like really important. Like we would get all this stuff given to us, and then we had like all these different bottles styles, these different sippy cup and the straw with the lid that only goes with the thing. So like started to get uniform everything, like all one brand of, of like bottle, sippy cup. It's all goes together. You don't have to keep it sorted. Spare pump parts. If you breast
Oh, that's
pump,
good.
having an extra set of parts is really key. To have one clean and one dirty. It's
Yep.
like a huge hack. So a lot of things like that. We really like the nose Frida that sucked
Oh, how
the
often did you
snot
guys
out
ever
of
do
the
that
nose.
on each other?
We didn't have to do that on each other, nose Frida. No, we did use. I did. Sometimes it didn't work, and I would use my mouth, which is like pretty gross, to suck the snot out of the
The
baby's nose
things we do, huh?
with the
Yeah.
mouth and spit it out. But it was like if she's snotty and the nose Frida's not working, or she wouldn't do it, I would do that. But the nose Frida was pretty good. We had
Is
these
it?
little pouch fillers. You can get these you can make your own baby food pouches. So
Yep.
we could put we used those when we were creating our products as samples, but as like I thought those were really cool, the little homemade baby food pouches if you make your own food or you want to save stuff
You
and
mean
send it
Serenity,
out.
right? Like Serenity's pretty fantastic. It just really connected too. And I was like listening to you talk of like what is in these pouches, and you're just like you blindly give them, and you're like, this is not good for anybody. And I think there's a lot of innovation happening in this space because like the early years are so important. And I think back in the not even that long ago, it was kind of this was a slog that you were meant to just survive.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then you could start to worry about all these other things. It was like, just get through it. And I was like, no, there's a lot of foundational important things happening right now. It's not just about survival. It's about setting up for survival is very important, but also setting up for more success. And I love that there's more products and more innovation and more people thinking about this stuff.
Yeah. Last one is the Mia Hipster baby carrier. I love this thing.
Ooh, what's that one?
It distributes the weight of the baby on your legs. So it's called the Hipster because it's got this little seat,
That's good.
and you can take this. They can just sit on the seat while you hold them if you want,
Yep.
or they have the full carrier that goes front or back. And the baby has to be a certain size, but pretty young. I think 4 to 6 months you can start using it. And I used that thing till she was like 4 or 5. I was still using it when she was like big, like for a hike or whatever. She'd climb my back and I'd use the thing, and love that Hipster carrier.
That is
Saves
good.
the neck
You
and
must
back.
have. You got like the backpack that she sits in now, or she's too old.
Now I just make her walk.
Yeah.
No, I'm just like, we don't go anywhere if you're not going to walk. I'll carry her on my back for a little. She can hold on with the traditional like piggyback now. At 7, like I'm just not going to carry her very far.
Yeah.
But definitely, 4 or 5, they still want to be carried quite a bit.
Oh,
And
I
so
definitely have. I've had the moment now where it's like, this was too
she's
sad.
got the airport scooter. So we got the
Oh,
scooter
that's a
that
good one.
turns into the backpack, the suitcase that turns into the scooter. So she loves that. We had the ride along suitcase when she was a little younger. So get them off your body, like ride on something
Did you
else.
have one? Yeah.
Yeah, lots of strollers, but lots of great, anything to make dad's life easier, mom's life easier.
Yep.
It's
But what you described, right? That actually makes your life. You took 2 products, and now I have to buy 1 instead of 2, and it vastly improves my airport experience, which is like a nightmare for parents. So
Mhm. Yeah.
I do think, right? It's just being smart about it. Of, do you need everything? Absolutely not. Do you need things that are gonna just cause you more stress rather than less
Yeah.
stress? And I'm still astounded how often that does seem to happen, where it's like, wait, that product just seems like it creates stress.
What is the max age for this new? When should you definitely? They're too big. Like you got to
Yeah.
get a real crib.
So 25 pounds is the current weight limit. And that's like, you're probably going to get to 6 months. There's a couple future NFL players. We actually work with some NFL teams. So I'm always like, we don't have access to this data, but I've always wondered, like, are they out?
Yeah.
But yeah, so 6 months is a really good rule of thumb. And then the the ones that really go past that are typically the premature babies.
They were, like, smaller, yeah. So then you go to a regular crib, and I say leave them in that damn crib until they actually climb out. Like, the moment that they make it all the way and, like, fall and it hurt, I mean, they're not gonna die, like, it hurts to fall out the crib, but, like, we took ours out when she just started kinda trying to climb out, and we regretted it. Like, it's you give you
Yeah.
leave them in that crib
Uh,
because then once they can get out of bed, your sleep
oh,
regression
you
goes
sure?
all the way back. They're getting up and they're coming out and they're talking to you. You have to we had to lock the door, which you hate locking them in. Like, that feels awful, but it's
It
like
does feel
you're just
bad.
gonna
I'm pretty nervous about this because our daughter, for some reason, just she's a really smart kid, but it was like she never figured out that you could leave. It was like, oh,
mm,
this is where I am. You know, this
good.
never tried, was in there for such a long time. And my son, who's like, you know, he's 15 months old,
Already trying to climb out.
we're already seeing like that twinkle where he's like,
And
ooh,
he's
I could
like,
do that. Yeah.
I put my leg there and my arm there. So
Yeah. I don't know if it's
yeah.
just a boy girl thing or he's just like, but
Different kids are different. Like, yeah, we've had our my niece, like, yeah, was trying to climb out really young. They had to put a cover. She called it a tent. They put like you can like a net on the top to keep her in, because she was just too young to have a toddler bed. But we
I
moved
think,
ours a little early and was like, oh, we could have had another 6 months of her being in the crib. Like, we should have done. So leave him in the crib, I say, as long as possible.
I
But
agree.
it makes sense to rent if you're only having the one kid. If you're going to have several, probably cost effective to buy it. Tag
Yeah, oh,
along,
it's a
secret.
definitely rent, definitely talk to your company, because that it's becoming a lot more popular, and then the end goal is insurance carriers, you know, government organizations. So, like, the breast pump, for example, it has to, like, the insurance
Yeah,
companies have to cover it, so everything related to a breast pump is reimbursable, and we see this as very similar, right? It's a medical device, it's a necessity, and if you obviously you have the choice, you don't have to get a breast pump, you don't have to get a SNOO, but if you do, so we have a couple companies now where this is available, where you can actually submit all your expenses for reimbursement, and your insurance carrier will reimburse.
right.
So that's a long term thing that we're working on. And then the
And
other
sleep is
really,
immune boosting for the whole family, so hypothetically saves insurance companies money,
eh,
you know?
we got to get you talking to these insurance carriers.
They have a hard time realizing this preventative saves them
Yeah.
money thing, like, it's gonna take a long time for them to really get that through their heads, but, like, that it is a dollars and cents argument, you probably
I
have
mean,
some
it is,
real
right? You're so much more likely to get sick. There's all these bad outcomes. And, you know, one of the things that we quote this a lot, but it's a McKinsey study that 1 in 3 women leave the workforce for over a year now after having a baby. And what's alarming and astounding about that stat is that almost all of them said that was not their plan, right?
yeah,
It's not a bunch of women that said,
yeah,
have a baby, take some time. They just had a baby and realized I can't do this all, right?
yeah,
I need to take some time. So if we can help with anything. And then the last I'll share too, it's been really not so much in the United States right now, but we've been talking to governments because there's a fertility crisis around the world. And, you know, how can we help make it easier to be a parent? And this is one where we're very cognizant of saying getting a SNOO is not an end all be all. This is a greater societal problem. But a big part of the reason, you know, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, but it's maybe not so much about I don't want kids and now I do want kids, but I had one and I wanted two, or I had two and I wanted
mhm,
three.
mhm,
And the reason you don't is it's really difficult, right? And sleep is a big part of that. You know, our founder and some of our executive team have been talking to governments in some of these countries where the birth rate is really, really low, and saying, here's some things we could do, right? Backup childcare would be amazing, right? More paid parental leave would be amazing, but also some of the devices we talked about today are the things that actually do really help with the mental and physical health part of having a baby. So, yeah, a lot of interesting things going on.
but saying you get 7 hours of sleep within the first several months, like, that's
Game
game
changer.
changing. Yeah, it's huge, so it's awesome. Well, great stuff you guys are doing. It's definitely you were before the robot AI trend. I mean, you were forward thinking on this, so, now we've got robot AI everything, so it makes sense to incorporate that to babies if we're at least to consider it. So glad you and then it came out of Dr. Karp's, like, very real technology with the 5 S's and how you soothe the
Yeah.
baby, uh, uh, with your body, with your mind, and then replicating that with the SNOO is just such a revolutionary thought leader he is.
Yeah, it's pretty
So
cool. I mean, he is my direct boss.
yeah,
He is the most hands-on CEO I've ever worked with. People are like, oh, he's probably a figurehead. I was like, no, 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 that man is in the office every day. He knows his P&L in every department. Like it's impressive. But
yeah,
I think that was the big differentiator to me as well. Is the concept is based on, because you said, right, being natural. Baby's been around for a long time. We don't necessarily need to reinvent everything, but a lot of his concepts are based on what used to happen in these tribal villages, right? It really is going back to the beginning and then now applying modern technology and modern science to an ancient, kind of wisdom,
yeah.
which, I find really cool.
Yeah, so cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on and to teach us about that. Good luck with your future kids and all the partnerships you're making and the growth and we'll
Well,
definitely be recommending this to
it's-
their new parents in my life and get them more sleep.
Thank you. Yeah. And same to you. Love the work you're doing. So, keep it up. Always nice
Yeah.
meeting some dads doing some good work.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, sleep well out there and stay dedicated.